How I made my Cyanotype Olivier vest by M Knits. Hello, my name is Toby and welcome to Mince Makes. You can find me online at mincemakes.com or on Instagram at mincemakes, and that's mince with a Z. I am a creator and owner behind Mince Makes, and I create lots of things. I love to collaborate with people and be inspired by works of the past as well as works of the present. One kind of method of creating that I've been really fascinated with for a long time, pretty much nearly a decade, I've been really interested in it, is a process called cyanotype. You might have heard of cyanotype referred to as sun printing. It's a photographic process. It's an alternative photographic process, and what that means is it is a camera-less process. So you might think of photography as snapping a picture. Back when film photography was the only option, you would snap a picture, end up with a negative. You'd have to set that negative and then use a projector to turn that negative into a positive onto light-sensitive paper. Cyanotype takes that last step of film photography of just exposing light onto a light-sensitive material. So cyanotype in particular I find to be really accessible because you don't need any fancy equipment to make cyanotypes, and the images are set in only water. So a lot of other types of alternative process photography, you have to use other kind of chemicals to set the images, and that takes like a lot of ventilation. You probably need you need a really dark room. And with cyanotype, you don't really need those things. You can actually put your cyanotype in incandescent light and it won't be exposed. So I find it really accessible, and you can do so many things with it, which I just love. I love things that you can do a lot of things with and come up with a lot of different ideas. The kind of basis of cyanotyping began in the 1840s, where Sir John Herschel figured out that this solution of potassium ferrocyanide and ferric ammonium citrate would create a sun-sensitive solution that, when exposed to the sun, would turn a deep Prussian blue. And he was a chemist, so he had that scientific background. And he worked with someone named Anna Atkins, and Anna Atkins was also a scientist and also more inclined in the kind of visual arts as well, and she started using this process to document ferns and various other plant life. And the reason it was really helpful for documenting these plant life is because you could set a fern or any other plant directly on your coated sun-sensitive solution on a piece of paper, and the resulting image would be an exact negative of whatever piece of plant material, whatever fern that you set down on there. And that was something that I think really appealed to Anna Atkins. She has a whole book that I'll put more information here, and I really love her work, and I really like a lot of the work that has come from cyanotypes, and I love that people are still doing cyanotypes. The first ever thing I cyanotyped, I'll explain it a little bit more as well, was this t-shirt. I made this in 2015, I think. Sounds right. Maybe I think it was 2015. So I made this shirt in 2015, and this is actually a negative was placed down on the part of this shirt that was coated. I am going to put this in a hydrogen peroxide bath, and we'll see if it brightens up the blues. This has turned really green. It accidentally went through the wash and got washed in normal soap. So it's actually a negative of a photograph of me when I had longer hair. The hair is like spread across this way. Might be hard to tell what it is, but it's kind of cool and abstract. So reveal of after a hydrogen peroxide bath. This is a little bit damp still, but this is what it looks like. I don't see a big difference. It looks maybe more green to me. Maybe it's a little bit darker. This did definitely go through the wash with soap and water, and I don't think my original print of it was really quite as long as it should have been. The longer you leave it out, the darker it gets, so I think it wasn't the correct exposure time anyway. But I think maybe that gave us some life back to this this shirt print. A hydrogen peroxide bath can make those blues more blue, In this case, these are maybe already far too faded and green and washed with soap to bring back much life to. So to be completely honest, I did not wear it that many times, maybe twice, and then it got put in the wash with soap and water. Cyanotyped does not hold up well to soap, so it kind of has lost a little bit of its charm. But last summer, 2 summers ago, in summer of 2022, I came up with an idea that I wanted to create a cyanotyped knitwear. I've always been into knitting, but I really have deeply dove deep into that passion within the past several years. And I wanted to make something that I could print a cyanotype on. So that's a little background of Cyanotype. I'll show you some examples of cyanotypes I've made. I have lots that are with kind of florals and plants, and then I have some that are with kind of other abstract items as well. So I make bookmarks. So these are some of my plant bookmarks that I've made. These are all one of a kind. And these have different plants that I've laid down on my coated paper, and then I put them out in the sun and exposed them. And any spot that is covered remains white or the color of the background, and any spot that is uncovered turns this deep dark blue. These are laminated for longevity, so you can kind of see a little bit of that glare. Sorry about that with these, but helps with bookmarks. I'll show some other things that are not laminated though. So here are some other examples. We've got some ferns. I try to take things from my backyard. I also try to take things in small amounts, and if something has seeds, I like to try to spread those seeds back to where they originally came from after I use them, or spread some of the seeds and then take some to print. I also reuse these plant materials over and over again. So you'll see some that show up multiple times because they're kind of some of my favorite pieces. And then here's some abstract ones. This was made with a kind of cardboard piece that comes in, giving you a chance to guess, in a board game. Pop out the pieces and you get something like this. This is kind of the foam mesh. These were little leaf charms that I found in my grandmother's stash of jewelry things. This is a plastic container from some food item, and then I put dyed water over the plastic food containers, so that's where you get some of those kind of watery textures. Have a lot more of the squares from board game boxes. Have some snowflake charms, and I like using netting is a good one I really like. Those are like onion bags. And then like this one is just packaging material. So I like to be really creative with those and kind of come up with things that you might not guess based on just looking at it. But those are some examples. And then lastly, I will show you some cards which are not laminated, and so you can get a sense of what those look like. And these are all for sale. The ones I'm showing right now are currently all for sale on my website. It's possible when I post this that they won't all be sold for sale, but I plan on adding more and more things to that. Right now I have only one-of-a-kind items, but hopefully I'll be able to expand into creating things that are not just one-of-a-kind. So here's an example of a greeting card I have, blank in the middle, nice cyanotype along the front, and some more florals that I've collected from outside my house for these cards. Ginkgo leaves, maple leaves, I really like those. And then ferns, you'll see in this one. You'll see in this one, I've got some ferns. There's some ferns that I'm very fond of that I like to use over and over. It's a snowflakey one from some charms. This one is packaging material. This one, also packaging material. And this one has got some leaves and plants. So, and then the last thing I think I wanted to talk about in this little intro to my work before I get into the video is I just wanted to show I already showed the back of my business card here, but I created these stamps myself. I carved them out of lino cut blocks. It was the first time doing anything like that, and I I was really happy with how they turned out, and it took a lot of tries and it took a lot of time. It was a lot more effort than I expected or thought, but I think they turned out really well. And if you ever want a tutorial on that, not that I'm a pro, but I might be able to do a tutorial on these stamps. So hopefully that's a good enough intro to cyanotypes. If you have any questions, let me know. I might answer some other questions throughout the video. But I love cyanotypes, and if you want suggestions on where to find materials, I'm happy to do a video about that. And I also have a tutorial on my Instagram page of just kind of basics of how to do cyanotypes. I might remake one on this YouTube as well. So looking forward to this YouTube journey, and hopefully you'll learn something, and feel free to ask any questions. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to see things that you make, whether they're cyanotype related or anything else. So yeah, enjoy the video. So we'll kind of jump off with what this vest is and the kind of steps I took to put it together. So the original vest is the Olivier vest by M-Knits. I'll put that information here. And I was actually a test knitter for this pattern, and I made one in a gray yarn that I actually frogged. I unraveled from an older sweater that I was gifted a while ago. And I'll put up a picture of me in that finished product. I really loved this vest. And I've had this idea for a long time of creating a piece of knitwear that was a combination of some plain pieces and panels combined with panels that are cyanotyped. The Olivier vest was like the perfect thing, the perfect pattern for this idea. This idea kind of started summer of 2022, and I kind of was thinking about it and started a little bit working on this project. So the first step in making this project was to make a bunch of swatches to make sure that the cyanotype process would work on knit up cotton. So I'll show you some of those swatches here. So to make these, I coated my knit item. I painted on the coating of this sun-sensitive solution, and then I laid it out in the sun, and I placed plants on top to make a negative of the plants. So these are some examples on 100% cotton. And then I used different colored backgrounds to see what would get me the best result. And I ended up liking, rather than having a blue background like this light blue background, I liked having a plainer cream colored background, like in this one. So I made all these swatches. I made many swatches. I really love all of them. They really turned out very well. And I am was totally blown away with how well these turned out. So after making my swatches to make sure that this would look okay on knit items, my next step was to figure out how to adjust the gauge for the Olivier vest to work with the yarn that works really well with this. So the pattern is written for a DK weight, I believe, or sport weight yarn, and this is a fingering weight cotton I used. It's Sheepshiss Organicon, and it is just 100% cotton, organic cotton. And it's a fingering weight yarn, so it's a much thinner yarn. So I did a swatch. I did some math, and I did a swatch to figure out, this was my swatch. I ended up cyanotyping the swatch, but this was my swatch to kind of figure out a good gauge. I ended up working with the gauge that I wanted, working out with the math. Ended up being this middle swatch using a size 2 US 2 needles. So I did all the math. I originally made a size 2 when I did the test, and now I'm making a size 8 for my fingering weight version, following all the instructions for size 8. As far as row counts, other than the lengths, I'm following lengths that go along with the size 2 or a length that I like. So that was my next step. Then I had much debate about which panels I wanted to be cyanotyped panels and which panels I wanted to be plain, and what color should I use for the plain ones? Should they be white? Should they be an already blue yarn? Should they be gray? I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I asked all of my coworkers, they're probably really sick of me talking about this project. What I settled on is I settled on actually cyanotyping yarn before it's knit up. So to do that, I took this yarn, but I used the blue, this light blue, and I sun printed the yarn. So I hanked it up, so it was a big circle, and I'll show some pictures here of what that process looked like. And then I set it out in the sun to expose, and the goal was to get a blue yarn. This isn't dye, but it shows up really similarly to hand-dyed yarn where it has some variation. I'll also show the hanks, but this is it wound into a ball. You can see a lot of that variation. You can see that base light blue as well. And I really loved the results, especially in the skein and in the yarn. It's a little bit darker, I think, than the camera is showing it as, but this is pretty much what it looks like. And I knit my panels with that. I think I'm going to re-cyanotype these, depending on how busy this ends up looking. So each of my panels that is not gonna be an image that's sun printed or cyanotyped is gonna look something like this. And these I like this blue and I like the variegation, but I'm worried it's gonna be too distracting with the other panels being supposed to being like crisp nature kind of images on them. So we'll see what I do. The plan right now is kind of to make my sun prints on the other panels, see how it looks next to these, and then decide if I want to coat these again and put them out in the sun for a little bit darker, more consistent of a blue. But I do really love the results of the yarn, and I think it's a really cool way to use the cyanotype process. It's really something that I didn't think of initially, and one of my supervisors at one of my jobs was the one who kind of made that idea come to mind for me. And I do think I would want to incorporate this into other projects. Then all of my panels that I was going to put images on, using the Cyanotype method, are just plain cream. So in the end, these plain cream ones will end up looking something like this panel here, with different plant matter or other kind of abstract items, and they'll be really crisp and blue. So that's where I kind of started. It also took me a long time to figure out which panels I wanted to be cyanotyped and which panels I wanted to be plain. Put up a picture of a drawing I just kind of sketched on the back of a scrap piece of paper at work to kind of come up with some ideas of which panels I wanted to be which ways. And the final way that I decided on was to have, there are 4 panels on the back, and I wanted the top panel to be a cyanotyped image, and then I wanted also the middle, the center panel going down to be a cyanotyped image, and then the side panels, those last 2 panels, I wanted to be blue for that contrast. And then on the front, there are also 4 panels. There are inner panels, and then there are these outer panels that form the buttons and come down the front. I wanted those to be cyanotyped, and the inner panels here to be a blue. So that's what I figured out. I'm gonna pin this out so you can see it, and I'll film that and put that in here. I've laid out the back panel to show you. My time probably would have been better spent actually blocking this and then pinning it out, but I just pinned it out dry, and the ends are not woven in. But just so you can get an idea, you'll see more of the finished product later. So here's the back panel. The front of the vest. That's where I am right now in this project. It is the beginning of January, and as you might have guessed, this process is pretty reliant upon the sun. That doesn't mean you can't make cyanotypes in cloudy weather, you certainly can. It takes a lot longer and is a little bit less predictable. So it might be a while until I actually cyanotype the panels because I really want them to be crisp, and it's kind of a one-take thing. So what happens with the cyanotypes is you coat it on or soak the fabric in the cyanotype solution, put it outside, expose it, and then in order to set the image, you wash it off in water. Once you wash it off in water, that blue is set on your fabric. So if I ended up with a result I didn't like, or a result that wasn't as crisp as I wanted, there's some of that is really a happy accident, and I really like that aspect of cyanotyping, that you're never going to end up with the same thing twice. Even if you use the same leaf in 2 different images, you're never really going to end up with the same thing, the same exact thing twice. Sometimes it'll move, sometimes the shadows are going to be different. So I do like that, but there's a kind of a line of like, if it looks like some of my wool versions of tests for cyanotypes like this, if it ended up looking like that, I would be pretty upset, because I'm really going for this crisp picture and image. I really want the flora to come through. And if it ended up something like this, then I would probably remake the panels and reprint them, and I don't want to have to do that. So I want to be really intentional with how I expose these panels, and I want to wait until I know I have good sun that's kind of closer to the center of the sky, so I don't end up with deep shadows, and so that it can be a little bit more consistent. I'll probably make another video of like a tutorial on how to make cyanotypes with paper items, as well as knit items, crochet items, woven items, so that you maybe have a better understanding of exactly that process. But that's where I am right now. So my next step is my plan is to block these, so I'll wash them and block them. You can tell, of course, they're really curly because it's stockinette, but they'll all be seamed together in the end, so that won't super matter. But for now, I do want to block them so that I can make sure they're a good size and make sure I don't have to remake anything.